Hi, welcome back to Random Reading Pathways. I'm Matt, and I am coming to you from a slightly different location here. Same room, but different spot. So I got a new bookshelf, so I kind of just wanted to use that as an opportunity to do like a little bit of a bookshelf show, not like a full tour, but just a bookshelf overview, and really more so pose the question to anyone else, what are your bookshelf organizing strategies? What are your tips and methodologies for doing that? I'll kind of tell you what I settled on for a couple bookshelf areas I have in here and see if anybody thinks that makes sense. But I'll probably rethink it. But for now, I'll show kind of what I settled on. So just quickly on this bookshelf, it is now the second bookshelf that I have grabbed off the side of the street in recent months that I've shown on this channel. So, in the last few months, I've been running around trying to beef up the bookshelves and beef up the physical TBR, since I've been reading a pretty good clip lately. And so with that comes the need for more shelf space. And so yeah, this one was on the side of the road, and I'm always out there driving around looking for things I could pick up. It needed a little bit of work. It needed a little cleaning and, sturdying up to get usable. But I have a pretty low standard when it comes to items of furniture I'm willing to pick up and bring into my residence. I think my wife's standard for that is not quite the same as mine, but this was above my line of things that are not usable anymore. So, so far so good. And I'll just go to this shelf quick and show you what I organized on there. I'll show you my other two shelves I have in here. And then the final shelf I just have like 3 books on there that I haven't talked about on the channel yet that I did read this year that I figured I would just give a quick little comment about. So starting with this newest bookshelf here, the breakdown, I have 3 shelf spaces in this room right now, and the breakdown that I have settled on for now is grouping them by type of book. So I don't know if that's the most common way of doing it, but this bookshelf is the first kind of big stand-up tall bookcase I've had in here with some more sturdy shelves on it. So I figured it made sense to do kind of like hardcovers, heavier books, and sort of like oversized books on here. So I'm going to try to coordinate my hand here to work with this little showing. But this little half of this top shelf here may look unfamiliar. That's because that is yet another library book sale haul from recently that I haven't got to on the channel yet. I hopefully will go over that at some point soon. But that actually was my local library's book sale, their annual sale, which I hadn't talked about yet. I've run around to God knows how many other libraries' book sales in recent months, but I finally got to my own. So there's some new additions up there that I'll talk about. The rest of them are just other hardcovers, and so then you wind your way down here. This is more hardcovers and oversized, kind of bigger, bulkier books, some miscellaneous stuff. As you can see in this half here, as soon as the shelf came up here, my daughter was close behind, and she very promptly carved out a nice little half of a shelf there for herself. She's got more books than that, but she definitely wanted to be part of that. So happy to share this shelf with her for the moment, for the time being. Once I eventually acquire enough books to fill up the shelf, we'll see. We're gonna have to talk that one out. We'll figure that out. But so that's just that shelf, and then down here is the only shelf I have that's kind of like genre based right now. So it turns out to be mostly sci-fi and fantasy, bigger, bulkier, like series type books, and a couple standalone ones too. But I figured they made sense to put on this shelf because, the bigger fantasy and sci-fi books that I've been reading are just that. They're bigger, they're bulkier, typically, and longer and heavier. So they seem to fit the best on this shelf. So yeah, definitely would like to go into some more of these books in more detail, but just wanted to do more of like a method to organizing type video and see what other people's thoughts were. So you got the hardcovers, the bulky, oversized books in this shelf. So then for this bookshelf, up on the wall here, this is the one you've probably seen behind me in some videos. I opted to start this one off now in the reorganization as kind of more of a mass market paperback, thin, light little paperbacks, mainly just for the weight purposes. Shelf doesn't look so bad in this video. I don't know if you can tell, but I had some heavier books up there that definitely caused it to bow and bend a little bit. So I'm trying to keep this to be like a lightweight bookshelf. So let me see if I can just grab this quick. I'll just quickly scan through kind of what's up here. Hello to Socrates first. Watership Down I talked about at length in a recent video. And yeah, you go down the list here. There's some philosophy, there's some classics. I've talked about A Bend in the River recently, and some new additions down there that most of these I need to get to still. But there is one book up here that I read this year that I hadn't talked about on this channel yet, and I figured I would just highlight quick, and that is Owen Wister, The Virginian. So yeah, this is the kind of classic, one of the first modern American like old westerns. It's kind of cited as like spawning the western genre a little bit. There's probably other books that claim that title as well, but yeah, I hadn't really read much in the way of westerns, but this was a random number generator selection from a used bookstore that I go to, which kind of has a good classics section. And if I'm in the mood for something like that, I'll punch it in that store and typically get a good classic out of it. So I read The Virginian this year, and it focuses on the titular character, the Virginian, who is this unnamed kind of cowboy figure who comes out west to this sort of Wyoming developing town and does a lot of cowboy stuff. You know, he tracks down horse thieves, and there's a big focus in the story on his kind of romantic courting of the quote-unquote school marm, and kind of goes through the ups and downs of their relationship, and he kind of saves her from different situations. But it's told by the narrator, who's called Tenderfoot. That's just the title he goes by. He doesn't really have a name either. And he's sort of more of this meek, mild, kind of just wandering around person, and he's like in awe of this force of nature that is the Virginian. Molly Wood, who is his romantic interest, she comes to this town from the Northeast in America, from Vermont, I think, and then it's kind of a struggle whether she's going to return to her family or she's going to stay with the Virginian. So yeah, it's very readable. It was very funny at times. For kind of an older Western book, it's extremely digestible, and yeah, I was laughing quite a bit at it. There's a really funny scene where the Virginian and some others, they get involved in this scheme where they like change babies in different carriages, so they mix them up, so there's some confusion and people leave this party they're at with the wrong babies. So I don't know, definitely some good humor in this book too. But yeah, so that's kind of the lightweight paperback mass market type shelf, and then I'll just swing over to the final one I have. So onto the final shelf. Sorry if this angle's a little disorienting, but this is kind of a short shelf and I couldn't figure out how to get it in the shot here. But yeah, I showed the debut of this shelf in one of my first couple videos I posted on the channel. It's another one I found sitting out by the garbage, and kind of spruced it up a little bit. It does rock back and forth because it doesn't have a bottom connecting piece, which adds to the fun of it. But this has become the trade paperback shelf, and it turns out that when you stack a shelf that doesn't have a bottom with some nice thick trade paperbacks, it does help with the weight and the balance of it, so it's a little sturdier now. But yeah, I chose to do this shelf with trade paperbacks. That is my favorite format of book to read, is a nice thick trade paperback, so I thought they fit nicely in here. Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can go through these. I'm not going to do like a full bookshelf tour or discussion, but I figured I'd just show each of the levels here, because the bulk of this is TBR, so there's not a whole ton I can really go over in detail yet, but thought I would just kind of show the different levels and what's made its way onto the shelf. And yeah, just a couple quick highlights of books I read this year from the trade paperback shelf. So here is Into the Wild, Jon Krakauer. If you've seen the movie, this is an image from the movie. But yeah, so this is a nonfiction account of Chris McCandless, who basically had this moment in his life when he said, "You know what? I'm done with society. I'm done with living this modern expected life of myself, and I'm just going to go out into the Alaskan wilderness and see how that goes." So, if anybody's familiar with the story, you kind of know how that goes for him. But yeah, it was a fascinating account, and I think my favorite thing about it was Krakauer's kind of defense a little bit of Chris. I think that there's a lot of critique I've seen out there over Chris's decision to go into the wilderness, and rightly so. I mean, he had some flaws in his thinking and his planning, but Krakauer does a interesting job of always kind of sticking up for him when he can, and dispelling and disputing some of the common theories that are out there about, what got Chris into trouble, this way or that way. And he kind of goes into a very research-based and logical-based explanation of, well, maybe, but maybe it happened this way. And I can understand why Chris did what he did. So I like that aspect of it. I enjoyed this, and I've seen a lot discussed about Krakauer's other book that's probably even more widely praised, which is Into Thin Air, which talks about his ascent up Mount Rushmore. And I actually just found that the other day at a thrift store. So that's Into the Wild. Another book off the trade paperback shelf that I read this year. This one, Philomena by Martin Sixsmith. I guess Martin Sixsmith, I think, was like a BBC correspondent or journalist, and, ended up writing this novel. But this is an image from the movie too, which I haven't seen. I probably should watch it now that I read this. But basically chronicles, it's a nonfiction book also, but it's told in more of like a fictional type format. It's told in a novel kind of format. But it tells the story of Michael here, who, and that's his mom, Philomena, and he's born in a kind of a nunnery or a convent in Ireland. And the thing that the Irish church was doing at that time was, sort of separating children born in these conditions from their mothers and from their families. So there's a lot of discussion in the book about the church's role in the mass kind of fostering of Irish babies and Irish children to America, to new parents. So that's what happened to Michael and his sister. They were taken to America to start a new life with a new foster family. And so it goes into that. But from that point forward, they each kind of have this nagging feeling and this nagging desire to connect with the other and seek them out. So it kind of goes into that too. There's a lot more going on here. I mean, Michael ended up being, well, his sexuality is a big part of the story. He was a closeted homosexual for most of his life, it would appear, insofar as the book is accurate. But so there's a big discussion of that and how that plays into his family dynamics in America with his new family. But he also becomes a very successful and powerful conservative attorney. And so kind of the conflict between his sexuality and the conservative circles that he exists in, professionally. But yeah, so I thought it was a very good read. The way I came about it was I was in a library book sale last year, and I had that typical feeling I get of didn't know what to grab, didn't know what to find. So my daughter, who I mentioned earlier, was with me, and I said, you know what, just go find me a book. I can't decide what to grab. So of all things, she went ahead and grabbed Philomena and gave it to me. Normally she would pick something way more pink and sparkly than this, but it worked out well for me because it ended up being actually the first book I read this year in 2024. And it kind of kicked off a good year of reading for me. So I enjoyed that one. And then lastly is this one, The Bird Artist by Howard Norman, another read from this year for me. It is, it's been a little while on this one, so I'll just, for accuracy's sake, I'll just read the back here. But Howard Norman's spare, lovely, haunting novel begins in 1911. Its narrator, Fabian Voss, is a bird artist. He draws and paints the birds of Witless Bay, his remote Newfoundland coastal village home. In the first paragraph of his tale, Fabian reveals that he has murdered the village lighthouse keeper, Botho August. Later, he confesses who and what drove him to his crime. A measured, profoundly engrossing story of passion, betrayal, guilt, and redemption between men and women. So, yeah, I read this. That does refresh me a little bit, but yeah, Fabian, who's the main character, basically his father goes away on an expedition of some sort, and his mother, he finds out, is a little bit involved with somebody else in the community, and so he doesn't take too kindly to that, and he kind of takes matters into his own hands. And he has a romantic interest in the story, too, who was certainly one of, if not my favorite character. She's a very kind of a loose cannon, and she's really keeps him on his toes, and there's a very dramatic ending scene involving her, which was extremely memorable. But yeah, so it just kind of goes into, you know, what the back described there. But yeah, I read this pretty quickly. It was kind of a page turner, believe it or not, so I enjoyed that book. But yeah, so that's the three bookshelves. Here's the trade paperback. You saw the mass market light, thin paperback shelf, and then the newest edition, which I rescued from the dump and put that as my current kind of bulkier hardcover shelf. So maybe once I get through more reading of these shelves, I'll be able to do a more full, detailed bookshelf tour and talk a little bit more about the books. But for now, I just wanted to kind of show the update, show the organization, and mainly ask and see if anybody else has tips or suggestions or any insights for how you organize your bookshelves. So yeah, that's the update for today, and looking forward to coming back soon with more updates.